Welcome to Top Knot Education, where you get a chapter summary of a classic novel in less time than it takes you to walk to class. This one's going to be a little bit longer than usual. It's a very important chapter. We're talking about Chapter 17. Holden begins Chapter 17 with one of his favorite hobbies, girl watching. I'll let him explain it. There were about 1 million girls sitting and standing around waiting for their dates to show up. Girls with their legs crossed, girls with their legs not crossed, girls with terrific legs, girls with lousy legs, girls that looked like swell girls, girls that looked like they'd be bitches if you knew them. It was really nice sightseeing, if you know what I mean. A moment later, though, he's depressed because he knows these girls will eventually grow up and become married to some, quote, dopey guy. Guys that are boring, that never read books, and get mad when you beat them at golf. There's an expression called arrested development, where people get stuck at certain moments in their life and never advance past them. Sometimes it happens as a result of trauma, such as a death in the family. Holden is forcing himself into arrested development. He's trying not to move forward. He hates notions of the future because he's unimpressed with phony adult behavior and because he wants to stay in the place in the world he was in before Allie died. That blissful, worry-free childhood where he could sing happy songs and not have to worry about things. Sally arrives and she looks really pretty. She's late and annoying, but he doesn't care because she looks so good. They start to make out in the cab on the way to the theater. Holden is trying to be smooth, but he keeps sliding off the car seat when it turns. Finally, he tells her, "I love you." It's not an appropriate thing to say, but again, it speaks to his loneliness. He's desperate for anyone to care about him, and when he gets turned on, he tends to interpret his strong feelings as real love. Sally's response is gross. Here's the quote. "Oh, darling, I love you too," she said. Then right in the same damn breath, she said, "Promise me you'll let your hair grow. Crew cuts are getting corny, and your hair's so lovely." Sally is either deflecting his awkward advance or just a generally shallow person, or maybe both. It's up to us to decide. They go to a play performed by the Lunts, who are a real-life Broadway couple of the era. At the intermission, Sally runs into an old friend who Holden calls George something. Sally and George talk endlessly about how marvelous and grand everything is. They're both so successful and love everything. It makes Holden want to die. Quote, "It was the funniest conversation you ever heard in your life," unquote. Holden's also mad about being ignored. He wants to take Sally home, but she insists they go ice skating. She looks so good in her ice skating skirt that Holden begins to forgive her again. But then they sit down near the rink and their conversation turns to deeper subjects. At least Holden tries to turn it that direction. He asks her if she's fed up with school like he is. Sally tries to defend school, and Holden breaks down admitting, quote, "I don't get hardly anything out of anything. I'm in bad shape. I'm in lousy shape." "You certainly are," Sally agrees. Holden makes her a wild proposition. He suggests they run off together and live alone in a cabin in Montana. Here's the invitation. "We'll stay in these cabin camps and stuff like that till the dough runs out. Then when the dough runs out, I could get a job somewhere and we could live somewhere with a brook and all, and later on we could get married or something. I could chop down all our wood in the wintertime and all. Honest to God, we'd have a terrific time." Holden would actually be miserable with a phony like Sally, and his plan is terrible. It hinges on borrowing a car from somebody who owes him $10. But the invitation itself makes sense. He can't stay a kid forever, but he hates how fake adults are, and in fact how fake teenagers are, as they're kind of adults in training. Philosophers like Locke and Rousseau covered the same material in their writing. Rousseau said, "When we live in a society, we agree to make certain sacrifices about our own characters. We give up parts of ourselves in exchange for the safety of the masses." He called it the social contract. A simpler version of Rousseau's philosophy is old Spencer's advice from the early chapters. Life is a game and you've got to play by the rules. Holden wants no part in the game or the social contract. He refuses to sign it. The solution? Leave society and bring Sally along because she's so dang pretty. Sally points out how bad the plan is. He tries to propose marriage, thinking that will help, but she declines, saying they can get married later. Their conversation is important. Sally says, "I mean, after you go to college and all, and if we should get married and all, there'll be oodles of marvelous places to go. You're just..." Holden interrupts her, saying, "No, there wouldn't be. There wouldn't be oodles of places to go at all. It'd be entirely different." What Holden means when he says it'll be entirely different is he fears for his future self. He fears he'll become one of those dopey men. He'll be mean and do all the things he was pointing out were problematic behavior earlier. Holden starts yelling at Sally and begging her to go with him, and then he starts mumbling incoherently. It's frightening to Sally, as it would be to anyone, and she starts crying. It's all extremely awkward. He takes her home and he starts to calm down. He admits he didn't even want to leave with her. Quote, "The terrible part, though, is that I meant it when I asked her. That's the terrible part. I swear to God, I'm a madman." Holden's got some things to figure out. Will he leave society to a cabin in the woods or some other means, including possibly suicide? Or will he grow up and be a dopey adult? Or maybe there's another more noble solution. You'll have to keep reading and listening to figure out if he finds it or not. Now get to class.